right, we are live. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. We have two speakers here ready to share their knowledge on this amazing topic that you all have submitted some great questions for. But before I pass the mic to introduce our guest speakers, just want to go over some quick housekeeping guidelines so that we can all stay comfortable and confident in this next hour. So everyone, you decided to spend your time with us here live. If you're joining us live, or if you're rewatching this, you're deciding to spend your time to rewatch this. So just want to say thank you for using this time to learn and grow with us together. So if you're here live with us, we'd love for you to participate. You can turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. You can also write in the chat anytime you have any questions or reflections, any of your own tips and tricks as well that you love to share throughout this hour. I also welcome you all to network amongst yourselves. So, drop your preferred ways of connecting in the chat. Please participate if you're here live with us. We really want you to make use of this hour that you're here with us. Now, if anyone has any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, go ahead and write to me privately in the chat. You can find me under Mariella Marie. Write to me privately there, and I will raise your question or your reflection to our guest speakers and keep you anonymous. Now, if we do have time, and I ask, if anyone wants to hop off mute, if as time allows, you will be featured in our live recording if you do hop off mute. So just be looking out for that rewatch email that will have a link to this recorded chat where you all can rewatch everything that we talk about in this conversation. You'll also have links to resources that our guest speakers might bring up throughout the hour. So if you signed up for this chat, you will be getting a rewatch email. So look out for that. The last thing I'll say is we'd love for you to follow Power to Fly on socials and subscribe to their YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store. And I see some familiar names, but I also see some names that I'm not familiar with in the chat. So I'll just take a couple seconds to introduce myself. If this is your first time joining a chat where I'm moderating, thank you again for being here. I'm calling from Patagonia in Argentina, the original lands of the Mapuche people. And I really enjoy speaking about the importance of emotional intelligence in the workplace, in our communities, and at home as well. So if we have time, I might philosophize or share some actionable tips on how we can deepen our emotional intelligence when it comes to being our authentic selves at work and in our communities. And if I don't have as much time to dive deep, you're welcome to follow the project that I'm working on that is called the Positive Force Team. You can go to thepositiveforceteam.org, sign up for my newsletter, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to connect there. All right, so without further ado, Rachel, some of you might have been on our previous chats where Rachel has spoken, but just want to pass the mic to Rachel. For those who have not heard you speak before here at Power to Fly, can you share a little bit about yourself, why you do what you do and what you're excited to share with us today, Rachel?
Yes. Let's see, where can I begin? As you can see, this is my journey. I got started out in the world of finance, but really I was trying very hard to figure out my own career path, and was helping people by way of referral. Eventually got certified through NYU and the ICF. And then once I got that coaching training, I was very interested in really sort of systematizing and digitizing frameworks that will help people be more efficient and effective and intentional with every career decision that they make. I did a tech MBA to further expand on this, and I've done career coaching through a variety of organizations, but have been building my own company for about 4.5 years, and really just trying to help every single person, as mentioned, feel good with any career decision that they make. And today we're going to dive in deeply around how the mindset can often impact any and all career choices. So
awesome. Thank you, Rachel. And I'm sure you're going to share more about yourself as you roll into some of your responses to these questions. So definitely want to make sure that folks can also be able to connect with you when we finish this conversation. So before I forget, how can folks find you online and connect with you after this hour is up?
Good question. IamWoken.com is our website. I'll put it in the chat, but for anyone listening, IamWoken.com is our website, and pretty easy. We always offer a free initial call, so as well as a lot of free blogs as well. So reach out. Always happy to hear and help.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. All right, so moving right along, Ruthie, we'd love to know about you. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, why you do what you do, and what you're excited to roll into for today's conversation?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this today. I was really excited. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and this is the only thing I've ever done. And I have to update that now. It's more like 23 years. But I started my career as a school counselor. I really loved working with adolescents and just kind of helping them in their teen journey. But when I started my private practice about 5 years ago, and I've always worked remotely, so even before COVID. But I realized, teens might not be the best population to work with virtually. So I kind of realized that working with young adults is just really an extension of working with teens, because there's so many similarities, so much overlap in some of the issues. And so I in my private practice, I specialize in working with young adults. I mean, it's not limited to young adults. I certainly have people in their 30s and 40s that I work with, but I love helping people in that journey from being a student to being an adult. And I put the word adult in quotation marks, and because there's a lot that goes on there. There's a lot of uncertainty, and there's a lot of anxiety, and it's a challenging time. And so I have really loved helping young adults navigate through that transition. I'm hoping that I can share some of my tips and techniques, and even just to validate that, like, it's not always easy, kind of dealing with careers and how to navigate adulthood. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to pass on today.
Awesome. Thank you, Ruthie. Well, again, I'm sure we're going to learn more about you as you share your knowledge and reflect on some of these questions. And before I forget as well, as time will fly, you all will see that the hour is going to fly by quickly. Ruthie, if people want to connect with you, I see you already dropped
just put it in. Yeah.
Great. For folks who might be rewatching this, who don't have access to the chat, can you just say it out loud how folks can connect with you?
Sure. So it's ruthiekalai.com, RUTHIEKALAI.com. There's a contact form that you can fill out. I promise I will get it, and I respond pretty quickly. But there's also my social on the bottom of the website where you can connect with me that way.
Awesome. Thank you, Ruthie. Thank you, Ruthie and Rachel. So Rachel, I'm going to pass the mic back to you, because I'd love for you to set the stage for today's conversation by covering the main takeaways for today.
Yes. So this is just an initial summary. I'm sure it will go in a lot of directions, but how to deal with fear and anxiety around your career. I mean, this could mean a lot of things, but in essence, we want to make sure you're coming from the right place whenever you're making a career decision or action, really. So we're going to just talk about those common struggles or challenges and what to do. And then comparing ourselves is another big one. We're going to touch on that amongst some other common feelings, and how to sort of stay focused on yourself, and clarity around your career path. There's a lot of feelings and thoughts and complexities with figuring out where you belong in this professional world. So we're going to talk practically how to do that. And, I'm sure Ruthie's going to chime in as well. And, it's a little bit around how to manage uncertainty and some of those challenging feelings. So today is all around the mindset, as a way to serve as that foundation, so that you can implement all of these good tips and practices. You might know all these processes, but if your mindset is not feeling really good or ready or open or confident, it might be hindering you. So if there's any thoughts or feelings, we want to hear it today in the chat, but these are just some of those big points to get us started.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that I can pull up these awesome questions that you all have submitted previous to today's conversation. I'm also going to pin my guest speakers here so that we can see everyone. All right. So let's get started. And I just want to highlight as well, if you did not get a chance to submit a question previous to this conversation, again, use the chat, drop questions whenever they come to mind. If you hear your question come up, let us know that you submitted this question. We want to make sure that we get the question covered. All right, so let's start with this first question here. What do I do if I don't know what I want to do professionally? And I'm going to tee this up for both of you. Also, feel free to pick it up. Whoever wants to start first.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, I could dive into the practical elements, but I'm really curious from Ruthie's side, because with mindset as our focus today, right? There's an element of how do I simply navigate the feelings involved in the pursuit, And then there's practically, what do I do? So I'll just super quickly go through like, what would your steps be? But then let's talk about how to sustain your level of openness while you navigate that journey. So super practically, you want to reflect on sort of the style of the work that's suitable for you, and thus the role that's a good fit for your natural affinities. You want to think about the problem and topic areas that you really care about, and thus the industry you might want to be involved with. And really an important part of today is being confident that you can find an environment that you thrive in. It's, again, with the mindset, it's kind of hard to go into this process knowing that you don't know, and knowing that you're sort of like searching for answers. And really, I always call it like tolerating uncertainty, navigating and managing the uncertainty, because in essence, career exploration is sort of a phase you can be in, maybe for a month or 2 or 3. You should sort of try to have the right structure and maybe time box it so you can really focus on those efforts. But it does mean that you're going to have to like remain a little bit open to seeing what you uncover. You may uncover some that are a fit or not a fit. You might be excited by some things you learn. You might realize that you thought it was a fit, but it's really not once you learn more deeply. So it's kind of like these crazy ups and downs that you almost need to expect that you will feel. And having support, right? Whether it's a therapist, career coach, mentor, peer, throughout it can be really, really helpful. But in essence, once you do that initial reflection, you're then going to come up with some options. I think it's important to like get comfortable with the fact that you don't need the answer immediately, but you do need to continue to take these like action steps to move forward. So once you have some options, then you're going to do a little bit of research and a lot of networking and a lot of reflection and a lot of pivoting throughout and adjusting and iterating until you reach that answer. The root of it is learning and reflection, in my experience, is what leads to someone being able to be confident in their best fit career direction. But that involves a lot of thoughts and feelings along the way. Yeah, Ruthie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is such a great segue to like, because that's exactly what it is. So, and Rachel and I think we collaborate really well together, because I'm very honest, like I'm not a career coach. I have certain activities that I do with people to kind of help them explore certain things, but I feel like then it can be really helpful to work with a career coach, because Rachel is really systemized, you know, with how she helps people do what she just talked about. What I come across in my work over and over again is this wanting to like have this answer and then go do the work, right? So there's kind of this tendency to wait for, you know, this big message from the universe saying, this is what you need to do with yourself, with your career, right? And so then people say, well, I'm just waiting. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know. I'm waiting to figure it out. But it kind of doesn't work like that. So kind of like what Rachel said is you just have to start doing things, and you have to then tolerate the uncertainty. There's also never a guarantee that the choice you make is going to be the right choice. And that's another obstacle of trying to figure out what you want to do professionally. It's like, well, what if I make a mistake? And so, okay, so you make a mistake, you know, that's how you learn. So I think for me, it's really the opposite of what people tend to do, which is if you wait for this answer from the universe with like this big light bulb that's going to go off saying this is what you should do, you're going to be waiting forever. Trying to play around with things and trying something on, even temporarily, or, you know, just starting the exploration process, that's how you're going to figure out, okay, this is what I want to do, or this is what I don't want to do. I mean, I use myself as an example. Like, I never sought out to have an online private practice. It never came to me. I didn't wake up and saying, this is what I want to do. I stumbled on it. And had I not done X, Y, and Z, which is what I was just talking about, I would have never found this path for myself. And it's a path I love. So it really is about pushing through that fear and that uncertainty and trying things, and then saying, okay, this was a hit, or this didn't really work so well.
Yeah. Mariella, you know, I'm famous for sharing my screen, so I'm going to just show you something quickly. I love being visual. This is what I often tell clients that like the career path exploration feels like. And so for me, I'm a huge, like, I love expectations. If I know the expectations personally, and Ruthie, I wonder if this plays into your work, it helps so much to understand what you're about to do. And if you know that it's going to feel a little crazy, it helps you to just simply tolerate and know how to handle that. So yeah, this image, it's actually from design thinking, if you know anything about design thinking, but my process is very much founded on design thinking. So you got to go in knowing that like there's going to be the zigs and zags, and we're just talking about the process of clarifying what it is you want. You're going to notice some interesting things. You're going to feel like all kinds of, it's going to be all over the place. But guess what? Look at what happens by the, if you're consistent with your effort of researching, networking, learning, reflecting, and pivoting, these are all really practical efforts. We're not just sitting around waiting for the sign from the universe. As much as I'm not, I'm not a woo-woo person, there is an element of feeling aligned and feeling intuitive, but it's action. Action will drive you to know how you feel. So that's kind of like what Ruthie's saying. When you try something, you talk with someone, you do a little research, maybe you do a little, there's experiential learning you could do. With all these efforts, it triggers reflection of what feels like a fit or what doesn't. So there is the light at the end of the tunnel. Another way I like to explain it, if you're a visual person, is like, imagine you're like in this jungle and you've got this like crazy knife thing and you're like whacking away the weeds and then you get to the other side. It's kind of like that too, but you gotta, you gotta one step forward. You gotta clear away the, the stuff purposefully with your effort, knowing, your end road, but you don't know what it's going to look like when you get there. You know, the goal is to feel confident about the direction, but you may not know what that answer specifically is. But you also know a little bit of efforts that might help you reach that. So you want to get more confident about your process and not be so steadfast on like, what is the answer going to be? It's more like, what's going to move me closer to my answer?
I love all of this. You all are just dropping so much knowledge. And what makes my heart shine in this moment is, if I can just reflect on emotional intelligence, it's the self-awareness piece and also the willingness to tap into our innate ability to be creative, right? And not say, not think so linearly. I love this image that you showed. It just really just hits the nail on the head, that it's okay. Life is messy and it's okay to, get your hands in the clay and create. And I love the image of, taking the machete and going through so that you can clear away, and maybe you clear away for someone else, or maybe you find it that you actually like clearing away things. Then there is no end. You help other people clear away things. There's so much in the moment that we can learn. So this intuitive practice along with the actionable practice that both of you are bringing together. Thank you so much. I love that. We've got folks writing in the chat saying that yes, waiting for a sign from the universe is totally her. This is from Elizabeth, and I don't want to fail my family and friends. Love this advice. So actually, Ruthie, I'm going to pass this next question to you. I feel like it's a great segue. So all well and good what you all both just said, but what about, the feelings of stress and anxiety that it can bring, right? Especially if we're not asked to play in this way, to explore and experiment in this way. We have a lot of social norms that ask us to, pick something, stick with it forever and ever, amen. And, especially looking at former generations that have had to hold certain roles for forever, and even if they liked it or not, we're shifting things now. The paradigm is shifting, right? So a lot of folks are pivoting into different careers. A lot of people are also bringing up this practice into their resume, saying like, I didn't stay here because I realized I didn't want to, but I learned these skills. And so that's going to help me speak to the transferable skills that I can bring to this role that I had no idea in the beginning. So I feel like there's some there is some wiggle room, just also to play around with that image. There is some wiggle room within this space that we're playing. So Ruthie, this question reads, what should I do when I'm feeling stressed around my career? How do I deal with the fear and anxiety around my career?
Yeah. So this is such an important part of all of this journey. And I want to put a really huge disclaimer that dealing with the emotional aspect of this is not an overnight thing, right? Like, I wish it was more concrete. Rachel's work is very concrete, it's action oriented. when you deal with the social emotional component of things, it is not a light switch that you just turn on and turn off. Like this is, so I'm saying that because there's the frustration. It's really common to feel frustrated. It's like, well, but I meditated for 20 minutes and I don't feel better. And it's like, because that's not how it works, And I just want to start off by saying that, like, I understand the fear of making mistakes and making a wrong choice, but none of us are perfect. You will always make mistakes. I make mistakes on a daily basis and I survive them. There's also this fear that, like, oh, well, if I make a mistake, I think one person said that they're afraid to kind of like let their friends and family know what's going on. But there's this fear that if you make a mistake, it's going to be literally the end of the world. And it's not. It might suck. And you might have like a week or two where you say, oh, I wish I didn't make that choice, but you survive. Think of everything that you have survived already in your life, breakups, divorce, moving, all of and you've survived it, right? So I want to say first and most that, like, nothing is perfect. You will never be perfect at everything. You will always make mistakes, but you will survive the mistakes. I promise. So getting to the stress and anxiety of things, for me, it's kind of lots of things involved. Most importantly, it's developing some type of practice, a regular practice where you learn to deal with stress and anxiety, right? So I like to use this, talking about being visual, I like to use this kind of illustration. Think of a ladder, right? With and the bottom of the ladder is 0 and the top of the ladder is 10. If you're constantly at an 8 or a 9 of the stress and anxiety level, the smallest thing is going to send you over the edge, right? But when you develop practices like meditation, like journaling, like talking to a therapist, like exercising, all of that, you get yourself to maybe a 5 or a 6 on that ladder, so that when something happens, because it always will, you're not going to go over the edge. You're going to be able to deal with it, right? So to me, first and foremost, it's developing a practice that helps calm your nervous system, because when you're stressed, you have no coping skills. When you're anxious, it's like those coping skills go out the window. So I'm a big fan of, like I said, meditation, exercise, sleeping, staying off social media. I'm sorry. I know, like, for a lot of people, that's really hard to hear. I get it. I love my social media too, but that's part of a practice that's going to help you with stress and anxiety. Talking about it, right? So the other person, afraid to talk to their friends and family, but like, that's how you're going to get through the stress and anxiety, talking about it, doing some type of self-care, even if it's just a bubble bath, which is free. It's not going to cost a lot. So that to me is like step number 1 that you can do. Step number 2 is just really working on the mindset piece. And this is what takes a long time, right? It's not allowing yourself to engage in the what ifs, the worst case scenario thinking, because the majority of the time, those worst case scenario things, they don't happen. All of that, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? They generally don't happen. You're just giving energy to your brain to think negatively. So working on the mindset piece, trying to be present, not allowing yourself to go down the rabbit hole of every possible bad thing that can happen. I know we will talk about it soon, but like the comparison piece, right? Comparing yourself to others, and again, social media, like, people only put good stuff on social media. No one puts bad stuff. And I promise you, no one's life is that wonderful. So anyway, that's just kind of like a really quick overview of how to deal with the stress and anxiety. But again, like I said before, this is not a quick fix. There is no quick fix. It's a practice.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes, Rachel, do you want to chime in on anything as well?
I mean, I love the ladder thing because it's so true. If we know these things are going to come, how can you just like proactively make sure that when these things do arise, you've already been working on, so I think proactive and I think reactive. You want the proactive daily practices, but then in the moment when you feel a pang of stress or anxiety, whether it's career related or otherwise, I think you also want to know what to do in those reactive moments. So meditation is still something you can use as a tool. I love Headspace. They have 1 minute, 3-minute meditations, and it's awesome. Like, you have 1 minute. We all have 1 minute or 3 minutes. And the power of what you can get from those 3 minutes, it's just immense. 3 minutes, it's like nothing. And yet the impact can just go such a long way. I actually just did one literally before we did this. So I love that. And so that's the proactive and the reactive. The other thing is just recognizing the moment, recognizing the feeling, and just, I usually say, like, hands off keys at that moment, because sometimes our temptation is like feeling stressed around careers, and then all of a sudden you jump onto the job boards and you just start applying. It's like, if we're acting out of that feeling, we're probably not doing the thing that's like the best thing for us. I like to try to apply some structure when I'm feeling stressed. So for example, you might say, okay, like, and have that internal dialogue, just say, like, why am I feeling that stress? Is it because I need out of my job? Is it because I don't know where I'm going with my direction? Okay, once I understand the feeling, it's like, what are some steps I can do to move forward? Knowing that landing a job, it's not, even if you go to the job board, that might be immediate gratification, but you're not landing that job immediately. So like, apply the process. Say to yourself, like, what might be the right next step so that I can still take an action, but it's not necessarily, sometimes your brain plays these tricks of like, this immediate gratification job board may or may not be the right next action to take. Mm-hmm. So like, it's okay to still say, like, what can I do about it? But like, maybe there's a few steps involved. Maybe it's like, all right, maybe I want to talk with my therapist about it. Maybe I want to talk with this person about it. Maybe I want to find a coach. Maybe I want to research a little bit. There's still, I love action as a healthy revenge to these feelings. But just, make sure you're not just automatically giving in and acting from that place. So I like to apply, structure in place of stress. I also used to often say, replace fear with learning. Because oftentimes when we feel that fear, it's like, we're not sure about something. And it's either something we need to like understand more about what's out there in the world in our options, or maybe we need to better understand ourselves and what it is we want. So maybe we need to reflect, maybe we need to learn something. But, if the fear just sits there as fear, right, where's it going to go? Right. So like Ruthie said, it's like, you could double down on like the negative line of thinking, or you could say, all right, let me use this feeling actually in a useful capacity. Those feelings are not bad. Those feelings actually show you an area of opportunity to strengthen whatever is going on in your life, whether it's like exploring a different job or whatever it may be. So it's okay to listen to yourself. That's actually like a useful thing, right? And then how do you take that forward?
And actually, sometimes the best thing to do when you're stressed out is actually walk away from the career stuff. Like, take a break. Like, sometimes that's great reset. And just kind of like to touch upon something about, like you mentioned the headspace piece, like there's science behind why something like deep breathing is helpful for anxiety. Like, I know it kind of is a little cliche. We say, well, just take some deep breaths, but there's actually science behind why that helps calm you down. And it's because the act of breathing slowly gives your brain the message that it's safe, right? So when you're stressed and anxious, your brain goes into fight or flight. It's automatic, you can't control it. But when you slow down and take even like a couple of deep breaths, your brain is getting the message, oh, we're cool, everything's okay, we're safe, we don't have to freak out. So same thing with walking, right? The left, right movement of your arms when you're walking is actually biologically calming of your nervous system, which translates into feeling calmer. So there's another, that's why people say, go take a walk when you're stressed out. Like, there's a reason why that it helps. So sometimes taking a break from all of it is kind of like the best thing to do for when you're feeling stressed out.
Yeah. And I like to say too, is I think some of my clients feel like bad if they're not doing the career stuff, but I personally think it's just as productive, if not more productive, to say, let me go do some mindset stuff, whether it's meditation or a walk or journaling or reflecting. Because when you're working on improving your mindset, that's going to translate into those better career decisions and efforts later. So if you need the mindset work today instead of some other practical networking or whatever, then that's great. That's actually good because it's progress. Like I think about it like a pyramid where it's like the mindset is the foundation. Then it's accountability to actually put in the time. But then it's also like, what am I going to do when I do put in the time? But that mindset is the first step. And if it's not feeling good, the rest kind of doesn't matter, because the mindset influences what actions get done or not done or how you go about it. So it's okay to spend the time on this stuff. You don't have to feel bad that you're not doing something else today.
100%.
I love this. And actually you all, so I hope that people understand, because it's just like I just had a clicking moment, and I feel like I knew this before, but you all are also just like helping things to click. If you're practicing this and developing this practice as you're looking for your career path, that's something you're going to have in your career, and that's going to make you better in your job, right? You're not going to hold on to the stress. You're not going to be, you're going to have the tools to pick up to do your job in a way that is going to serve you, to make sure that you're safe, you're creating psychological safety for yourself and for your team. And then also you're rocking on your job, so I love that it's going to be a long-term, benefit to start this practice now in the job search. Something as small as walking away, going for a walk, taking deep breaths, and implementing that into what we're doing. I mean, this is great. And we've got a lot of folks chiming in. Bridget writes that her dog always tells her that the key to life is to go for a walk and to get her on the leash and go for a walk. So
that's true. Dogs know it all.
So actually, I want to just kind of take us back a little bit, because I know that, obviously, well, I just highlighted how these practices can benefit, you getting into a good groove when you have a role and when you have found that great career choice. But when you don't have the tools to allow for that space to be created, to walk away from fear and anxiety, how does fear play into your career decisions? So this question leans into that, and it reads, how does fear play into my career decisions? So I'd love for Ruthie, can we start with you on this one?
Yeah, sure. So I guess it can act in a couple of different ways. And number one, fear is often, I see the fear of making the wrong choice. And so then it becomes this, like, it leads to inaction. So, I've never seen, or very rarely have I seen, action come as a result of fear. It's actually really paralyzing. So if it's a fear of, well, what if I make the wrong choice? It's kind of what I said before of like, okay, well, you might make the wrong choice, but will that wrong choice destroy you? I have this, I was trying to look for it earlier and I couldn't find it, but I have this great meme of it where it basically says, like, the universe isn't about the right choice or the wrong choice. It's about, like, whatever choice you make, that then becomes the wrong choice. Or, sorry, the right choice. I didn't mean to say that. So I'm going to say it again. Whatever choice you make is the right choice, right? So, but if it's fear, and Rachel kind of talked about this too, it's like fear can sometimes make you do things impulsively, right? So maybe it's you were offered a job and you're afraid, oh, well, nothing else is going to come along, so let me take it. But then you take a job that maybe you're not going to like. It's not what you want. So, or applying to things that you're not really interested in, but because it's this fear of like, well, what if nothing comes along, but I guess the biggest thing that I see is often fear of making the wrong choice. And that is really a fixed mindset, and that is going to keep a person paralyzed every single time. So it's just really, really recognizing, like, it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to make the wrong choice. You're never going to be perfect, and you will get through whatever the wrong choice is.
Yeah, I think the other things I see is fear can make you think you're less capable of something. So, like, sometimes I see people decide whether they can or can't before they fully understand the path, right? So just make sure that, like, this is where I always say you want to understand where your decisions are coming from. And they need to come from, like, understanding accurately the information of, like, what is this role? Like, what would be required of me? Do I understand that objectively from multiple sources and feel like I do have a deep, accurate understanding of it? And then am I seeing myself clearly in terms of my own potential, my capabilities, and what I'm capable of? Now, sometimes that's really hard to see, and a lot of people have that imposter feeling. So you just want to make sure you're not deciding based on fear before you have that full understanding. Working through that imposter feeling is a whole other sort of thing, but that's the other way that I see fear playing out, and similar to the other scenarios that Ruthie said. I think I brought this up actually when we were planning for this event, because I remember I was talking with someone and they said they were referencing in hindsight why they took a certain job, and it was from that place, and then they like regretted it in hindsight. So like, you know, you can maybe look back on some choices of like, what drove you to either say yes or say no to those things, and how did that pan out? So your feelings and how you're feeling about a certain decision is helpful to listen to. Now, of course, there are elements of like, if you need a job immediately, sure, there is some elements of reality, but even if you need a job immediately, if it's that much of a red flag or toxic or not going to be okay, like it might very well mean saying no. Now, saying no requires real courage. So again, it's not that these feelings are always easy and decisions are always easy, but just because a feeling's uncomfortable doesn't mean just do the easier thing. So get support to do. Sometimes we know we have to do the hard thing, and it's hard. Hard things are hard, but it doesn't mean they're impossible. It means you need a little support through it. And to Ruthie's point, what's the worst case that happens if you were to say no? Saying no opens you up to like, oh, now I have my time still available to me to search more for the right thing. There's so much I could probably say about this, but I'll pause.
No is not a bad word. I love saying that. It's not a bad word. It's just no.
Yes, I love this. Okay, so I'm going to dig a little deeper on what both of you are saying, because I do want to bring up the fact, as you know, both of you are saying, sometimes you got to say yes because you need the job, because you need the money, because life requires us to pay for things that we need. And so someone, you know, for that fear to come in of like, okay, I won't be able to make it because I got things to pay, so I'm going to say yes to this job. How can someone navigate that, that space? Because I've seen a lot of people say yes and they end up staying for years, but they said yes for, short outcome. And they allowed that to have like such a long-term effect that then, negatively affects a lot of things, their health, and all other things. So what do you recommend someone do if they are in that situation where they might need to have that hard, I can't say no because I do need the money, so I need to say yes, but how can I simultaneously be either looking for other things or make sure that I know this is my, I need to make sure that I, put a date out in front so that I just, know to not stay here for the rest of my life. How would you navigate? Because it's a sticky situation. And Ruthie, I see you nodding, so I'll pass the mic to you first.
Yeah, it is sticky. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that it's a piece of cake to look for a job while having a full-time job, because looking for a job is a full-time job. What I've seen, actually, kind of like one positive of COVID has been that because more people are working from home, it gives people a little bit more flexibility to actually do job interviews during the day. Now, I know that's not always it's not always an option for people, but I've seen that. So like, if you do have that opportunity or the ability to schedule interviews during the day because you're working from home, like that helps. I would also start small. Like, I wouldn't go from, okay, I need to find a job to, like start interviewing. I would do baby steps. And I'm sure Rachel can talk more about this too, but it's like, okay, first start working on your resume, get that up to date, or like get your LinkedIn worked on. And I've heard people say there's a fear, well, what if I update my LinkedIn and then my boss is going to see that I've updated? And it's like, okay, so what? And most likely they're not. Bosses are busy, right? And there's nothing, you're not doing anything wrong by updating your LinkedIn. So kind of like, let's squash that fear. I guess sometimes setting deadlines for yourself, like you kind of mentioned it, putting a deadline and saying, okay, by the end of the year, I'm going to have my resume done and my LinkedIn profile updated. And then just focus on that so that it's like baby steps. I'm a big fan of like teeny tiny baby steps, because when you try to accomplish too much all at the same time, you just get overwhelmed and then you end up doing nothing. So, like it's August, right? So what can you do between now and the end of the year that is going to propel you just a little bit more forward. So just, start small, do baby steps. Again, there's also like, I know sometimes people say, well, they don't have the finances to work with a therapist and a career coach. And there's great resources out there that are books or that are, websites that can help you at least navigate some of the things that you need in order to explore new job searches. But I guess my biggest recommendation is baby steps. Do it in really small bite-sized steps so that it's not too overwhelming and it's not too difficult to do while you're working a full-time job.
Yeah, I agree with everything. I love that baby steps. I very much agree because same thing. If the goals are too big, there's really no need for that. Like, what can you do today? What can you do this week? Focus on the one. When I work with clients, it's literally one step at a time because I don't believe in multitasking. It literally is a thing that you cannot do. A human cannot do. So let's think about the one next step. And then, yes, maybe when could we accomplish it? And how can you get some support? And, on affordability, like have a mentor, have a peer, like hold yourself accountable with someone else, even if you can't afford to pay for help, or try to find any sort of affordable, like group-based model or something like that, where external sources of accountability and support, whether it's co-working or whatever it may be, it can help a lot. So yeah, love co-working, love to leverage external sources of like accountability, and also just feeling some level of guidance, right? Whether it's a book, a YouTube channel, a blog, some resource, because sometimes if you're feeling like you're guessing all the time at what to do next, that's often not a fun feeling either. So it's okay to take a week or 2 or 3 or 4 just to say, what's my approach? Like, where am I going to get the support that I need throughout this journey? Set yourself up for success first, and maybe come up with a bit of a routine. Some people operate better with goal dates, and they may say like, okay, by Monday, I'm going to do this. Other people are like, you know what? Every Wednesday night, even though my job is really taxing and difficult, for an hour at 8 p.m. on Wednesday, I'm going to do some career stuff. And look, 30 minutes once a week, I usually recommend that as like a minimum. I would venture a guess most of us can find that 30 minutes once a week. And even if you go that small, that's still progress. I was saying something about revenge earlier, action. If you're not in love with your current job, the best revenge is sort of that other outside stuff that you can do for yourself. The other way I like to think about it is like, think about your professional energy as like this bucket of 100%. You don't need to give 100% of your professional energy to the current job. It depends, of course, your skill set and like what is required to do your job well. Of course, you need to meet expectations, but oftentimes we can sort of toggle it down to like put in 90% or 80%, carve out and protect a small percent of that just for your own career efforts that are irrespective of that current job. You don't need to give all of you to this one company and totally exhaust the fumes so that there's nothing left.
I just have to say, like, I've been seeing lately people that I work with say that they are amazed because they have taken it down to like 75, 80%. And then they get their reviews and their supervisors are saying, wow, you're doing such a great job. And they kind of laugh and they're like, well, all this time I was putting in 100% and I could have just been putting in 80 and saved myself some sanity. And my boss never even realized it. So yeah, totally. The other thing I'm also seeing, again, a kind of a benefit of COVID is more companies are offering kind of mental health services. So I'm seeing a lot of people being able to work with coaches or therapists for free. That's offered by their company. So if you don't know if your company offers that, look into it. Reach out to HR. You might be surprised that they're going to offer you like 8 to 10 sessions with a coach or a therapist.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Time is flying. So we've got 15 minutes left. I told you all that time would fly. Let's get into some of these more nitty gritty questions on, application processes and interviews and things like that. So this question reads, how do I get comfortable and confident applying for things I'm not perfectly a fit for on the job application? Please notice I used the quotation marks perfectly. Please debunk, demystify that word. I know both of you probably have a lot to say about that. Rachel, how about you pick this one up?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was just talking with somebody like a day or two ago about this. I think the statistics show that people who identify as women more often don't apply if they don't meet every single criteria. And so we need to turn that around. I personally think if you meet about 60 to 70%, you're good to go. Now, this is the predicate. Can I understand the job posting, and do I objectively view my own skill set? So if you have an impostery feeling, I would try to work on that first, so that you can then go read these things and try to like make a fair assessment. You know, imposter syndrome means that I like to think of it like this spectrum. It's like we could be overconfident, we could be underconfident, or we could try to see ourselves as objectively as humanly possible. That would be the goal. And so work with a mentor, coach, peer, someone to try to do that exercise of trying to see your skills as objectively as possible, so that you can assess, do I meet 6 out of 10 of these elements? I think recruiters and hiring managers are more open-minded than you might think. And they want someone who wants to stretch and wants to grow. I would also think about, have you ever been given things in a prior job that weren't on the original job posting that you had to learn quickly, etc. So your ability to learn and grow is I think inherent in every job posting. Yes, they are going to look at your resume and your LinkedIn for like, essentially, are you roughly in line with what we're looking for? But there's so much more that comes when you meet, right? Your culture fit, your style, your values, how you think, how you approach work, all those strengths that you're going to bring to the table. And by the way, you can also just have an understanding or an exposure to those other things. Sometimes by just explaining what you know about those other things in an interview, sometimes that's more than enough. If they can trust that you would know where to go get the right resources and how to actually learn, and you explain that in your prior job, you were given this task and in 3 days you tested it, experimented, and you're scrappy and you could figure it out, they will then believe, because you've given them examples as to how you would approach it in a way that's realistic. So there's a lot to come when you meet the person. And look, don't take yourself out of the running before you're in the running. Like, you got to put your hat in the ring to see where it goes. And I also think a lot of learning comes from doing the job search itself. So once you start a few applications, networking, interviewing, then you can better refine. Okay, maybe there's this one job title in specific is actually a stronger fit. And I'm learning that because I'm testing sort of the boundaries, and I'm testing the waters, and I'm putting myself out there to see how things go. I mean, we don't want to just rely on those online applications. We do need to get our foot in the door and network, so they meet you as a person and not just judge your on paper materials, but use a rule, try to make it a practical process, like 6 or 7, maybe 60 to 70% of the bullets on the job posting can be a good fit. Another way to do it is like, give yourself a 1 to 10 on each of those elements. And that could be in both how experienced and how interested you are, or how, easily could I get up to speed on this thing? Would I be great at this thing if I were to be trained as such? Or how similar is this to something I've done before, even though I might have done it slightly differently? So try to make it more of this like writing process. And if you need help getting out of your own perspective, get like a beautiful thing of my job is like, I get so much perspective. So it's easy for me to like look at someone and be like, yeah, like this really is a strong fit. Or look, if you're pivoting, that's not impossible to pivot, but maybe there's creative things like add a course or certification to prove that you are already learning how to do those things. So there's always creative ways to go about it. And so getting someone else's sort of support and opinion outside of your own is a really good way to make sure you're not just like spiraling and holding yourself back unnecessarily.
Don't underestimate or don't undersell your soft skills, because that, I mean, like example, project people who are project managers, right? They're afraid that they pigeonhole themselves into a project, like maybe the tech industry, right? But project management skills is so universal. It can easily be transferred to so many other areas. So, I wouldn't sell yourself short if you have these great leadership skills or, things that you've done, like Rachel said, projects that you've been really proud of, because those skills, you take those skills with you. Like, that's part of your personality. That's not going anywhere. So don't forget that.
I love that. I love what both of you are saying. So we've got about 10 minutes left. And I just love to dive in a little deeper to this idea of perfectionism that we are retiring that concept, right? I love it. It's just been like the past few years of us doing this kind of work. We're like, this is the old model, let's get messy. I love this acronym that I learned about, the word FAIL, first attempt in learning. Like, easy, we're doing this, practice makes progress, not practice makes perfect. And actually practice makes you more confident, as you were saying, Rachel, that, if you see how people are using the terminology and you are doing this, like, self-evaluation thing and taking it as a writing exercise, that can actually help you be more confident because you see what's out there. So again, demystifying perfectionism a little bit more when it comes specifically to interviews. So let's say that this person has, applied, they have a chance to interview, and this question leans into that a little more. So how do I deal with wanting to do well at interviews versus focusing more on choosing where I want to interview? How do I deal with perfectionism? So kind of two questions in one. Speak to it however you'd like.
So go ahead, Rachel.
Sorry, a lot of people look at just job applications and interviews as this like check the box thing. But there's no need to be competitive about it with yourself or with others. There's no need to just be good at it. I mean, of course you want to be good at it, but if you have an interview, it's not just like, let me crush this interview, like figure out if you really want to be there. And then of course, yes, rise to the challenge and rise to the occasion. But I like to say that like, networking and interviewers are a mirror into the job that you may do. And so don't apply and don't even pursue an interview unless you really want to be there. Yes, interviews can be a source of practice, but it's not just about showing up so that they assess you. You're also assessing them. It's a two-way assessment of fit. You want it to be useful use of both the parties' time. And the way I like to think about it is whether you're pursuing networking or interviews, it's like, who do you want to talk to? About what, why, where? Those conversations are about how do we solve this problem? What is the problem we are solving? What are the methods we can use? And if those aren't things you enjoy working on and talking about in those conversations, then why would you maybe enjoy being hired there full time? So I would just be really, this is where the proactive strategy comes into play of like, what are the roles and industries I really want to go after? Like, don't skimp on that upfront reflection and clarity. It's going to be a game changer so that when you do land interviews and pursue those things, you want to be in those conversations. Mm-hmm. And that just will shine. When you want to be in an interview and you're engaged and you're talking fast and loud like I am, people always tell me I talk fast and loud. Why do I do that? That's because I care so much about this. Okay, if you were to ask me to talk about like fashion, I'd just be like, I don't care. And it's okay if you do, by the way. But what are you going to talk fast and loud about? Because that's the person they want to hire, because all of a sudden your energy, they need that. They need your motivation. They need your drive. They need results. They need someone who cares and wants to be there, because these days we're often all lacking a little bit of energy. If you're not getting energy out of that networking or interview, I would refine who or where else would be an energizing conversation. There's no need for you to work in a job. I mean, if you need a job, just to have a job, that's fine. But outside of your role, you can explore, where would I be energized? And then you go pursue that versus just like, I think people like look at job search like this robotic, like I have to, put on this performance. Like, no. Be yourself and assess what conversation you want to have, because don't forget, it's like a choice as well for you to attend the interview and assess if you also want to go work there.
And also don't let perfectionism drive the bus of those interviews, because I've seen it where like a person is so caught up with, I have to ace this interview, that they don't necessarily think about whether it's a like what Rachel said, it's actually a job that they want, because they're not even thinking about that. They're just so worried, like I have to be chosen, and therefore my interview skills has to be perfect. But then let's say they don't get the job and maybe they're disappointed, but then, when they think about it, are they disappointed with like the fact that they didn't get this amazing job that they really wanted, or are they disappointed because they just didn't get picked? And oftentimes it's the latter.
Like, I feel like I see a lot of people with interviews that like just worry about being judged, and like I wonder if sometimes there's like deeper, could come from childhood where like maybe you felt bad being judged by others and you have to prove yourself. Like, you know, Ruthie, do you ever see like things deeply, maybe subconsciously ingrained from years past that bubbles up during these processes?
Oh my God, 100%. And without kind of having to go too far down the rabbit hole with this, it does have a lot to do with childhood and not necessarily getting unconditional emotional acceptance. You know, a lot of people grow up in households where maybe they were like overly criticized or, you know, pushed really hard. And the emphasis growing up was just like, get good grades and please don't be like, we don't want to hear you, just get good grades. That's all we care about. Right. So, or the opposite, right? Like parents that just weren't involved in lives. And yeah, it often creates, you know, when I see people struggle with perfectionism, I would say 99.9% of the time, it comes from some type of childhood pattern that has created this need to be perfect, or this fear of, well, what if I make a mistake? Because there were so many repercussions growing up of not being perfect or of making a mistake. So kind of like to give a really brief overview of it, the long answer to your question is yes, absolutely. There is always a connection.
Thank you for asking that question, Rachel. And Ruthie, thank you for sharing your expertise there. So we've just got a couple minutes left. So I'd just love for both of you all to leave us with some food for thought. You've already shared so much. So if I can pass the mic to both of you to leave us with, you know, if there's a lot that you all have covered, but just one thing you want people to remember, and then remind us how we can connect with you when we finish. And Ruthie, I'd love to start with you.
Sure. I think my favorite thing, like to leave people with, and look, if this helps me, is just like have forgiveness for yourself, have compassion and grace for yourself. You know, it's so easy to just like pummel yourself over the head with this hammer of not being fill in the blank enough, right? Or having to be perfect. But then when you have a little bit of grace and compassion and forgiveness for yourself, it really goes a long way. And so, okay, maybe today isn't like a perfect 10 and you need to just spend some time out at the park, like hanging out. Okay, great. You'll pick up where you left off tomorrow. You know, it's super, super important to just have a little bit of compassion for yourself, because, you know, we're so hard on ourselves. And I use the we because I get into it too sometimes. So, you know, and again, like another biggest takeaway, I think, is just break this down into really small baby steps. You're not going to be able to do all of it all at once. It's just not possible. So it's like, pick one thing that you can work on, and then work on that and let that take you to the next step, whatever that is. And you have no way of knowing because you haven't started yet. And there's no way to know because you don't know where one step is going to lead you to. So I would say that's my biggest takeaway for this journey that either you're about to embrace or you're already in.
Thank you, Ruthie. And then remind us where we can connect with you.
Yes, thank you. So the best way to reach me is through my website, which is ruthiekalai.com, RUTHIEKALAI.com. And you'll see all my social links down on the bottom of the website.
Thank you, Ruthie. All right, Rachel, final words, food for thought, and then remind us how we can connect.
Yeah. Look, take care of your mindset, and it's okay to do that work first. Get yourself to feeling open. And even though it's uncomfortable, that's the best, most productive, courageous, important thing you could be doing, is just find support to just take care of your mind and get to a point where you can feel a little open-minded, a little bit ready to pursue all the rest. It's that foundation of the pyramid. So if you need a few weeks, if you need a few months, you know, focus on it, put in some practical action and get support. But it's okay to just resolve the mindset first and foremost, and then all the job, you know, search and LinkedIn and resume, all that will come. But if you get your mind in a ready state, your decisions and actions and outcomes thereafter will just be so much stronger and just more aligned with the real you. So try to focus on the mindset first. And I'll put my website here, but it's iamwoken.com. And reach out. Would love to help you guys. And again, you know, give yourself grace. Like Ruthie said, it's okay to take things slow, take things at your own pace, and know that people like us, we're here to help. We want to help. So reach out.
Definitely reach out.
Yes. Thank you both. Thank you, Ruthie. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everyone who's joined us live and everyone who's rewatching. Good luck. I'm going to rewatch this and send this out. You all have shared so many beautiful tips and tricks. So I appreciate both of you. Good luck moving, Ruthie. I know you're in the process.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
Tomorrow.
Good. And I hope to see you all online again soon. And until then, take care, everyone. Enjoy.
Bye.